Welcome to ADF Property, the podcast where we talk about all things property investing and real estate for Australian Defence Force personnel. Whether you're looking to build and scale a property portfolio or relocating across Australia, we've got the insights and tips for less stress and more success. Let's dive in.
Wow, everyone, what an introduction. Welcome to the brand new podcast, the ADF Property Podcast. I'm Grace Ormsby, joined by my co-host, Kane Dury. Kane, welcome to this very exciting project.
Hey Grace, how you going? Very excited as well. It's first cab off the rank.
Pretty exciting, pretty big milestone.
Yep.
It's been a while coming, I want to say, that you're doing some amazing work over at Discover Buyers Agency. This feels probably like a bit of a natural progression for you.
Yeah, definitely. Excited to get amongst the ADF community. I feel like I've been out forever, but it wasn't that long ago. And keen to sort of build the property podcast space with the ADF community.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you were recently on an SBI show with the one and only Phil Tarrant. That was only a month ago now. So people who are listening, you probably have heard Kane's voice pretty recently. What's going on?
Yeah, so cracking into the financial year, lots happening, in the new financial year. Obviously there's tax cuts. And a new financial year off to a screamer. To kick things off, the first episode.
Here we go. I mean, it's a pretty cool background behind us here. For those that can't see, we've got a big ADF Property Podcast screen up behind us.
Yep. They did a good job editing that photo.
They did an awesome job of putting it all together, and it is a pretty exciting concept. Kane, can you just give us, before we sort of get into what we're going to be talking about in this first episode, because there's a lot to get through, but why you thought this was the perfect vehicle to be getting some more information out there to people?
Yeah, so I guess there's lots of young men and women in the Defence Force, and there's many grants that they're entitled to while they're in the Defence, but I guess you don't know what you don't know, and there can be a big difference in results if you use the grants at the appropriate times. Things like rent assistance and service accommodation versus buying an own occupier, but also comparing that against the market that you're in. Example, Townsville, North Queensland from 2008-10 through to 2010, it was a very, very flat market. So you might opt to take rent assistance or service accommodation and buy investments elsewhere, versus maybe in 2020, after such a long period of no growth in a region, if you were to get posted there, you might opt to buy an own occupier because the capital growth on that own occupier would outperform the amount or the dollar value of the rent assistance or service accommodation. So it's all about education and helping people understand, well, I'm moving from Townsville to Adelaide or Adelaide to Canberra, and what's the Canberra market doing versus the Adelaide market, and what options do I have at my disposal within the Defence to build and scale my portfolio?
It's a really, really important space, and it's cool that we can talk about these things to the defence industry itself, but also more broadly speaking to a property investment audience. There's so much crossover there. And for those who maybe don't know about your history and the work that you've done across both these spaces, can you give us a brief rundown?
Yeah, sure. So 18 years old, grew up in South Australia, joined the Army, 22 years old while serving, just finished my apprenticeship as a diesel mechanic in the Army, purchased my first investment property, 24, purchased property number 2 and 3, and then continued to build a portfolio. After 12 years of service as a sergeant, I discharged and started working as a mortgage broker. Did that for 6 years, then transitioned to work as a buyer's agent. So many skills as a mortgage broker sort of transfer across. Was a finalist for Rising Star in 2023 for the REB Awards. And now Discover Buyers Agency, working sort of predominantly with the ADF community. And then, the first show, here we are. And the plan is that we'll sort of interview ADF members and just share some stories with them and hear their stories. And
it's one of the best ways to learn, isn't it? To take in not only other people's wins, but some of the challenges that they've faced along the way.
Yeah.
How pivotal has that been for you in your own investment journey?
Yeah, I loved hearing other people's stories because it helps you form your, what's right for you, and it builds your knowledge. If you only have one source of information, that generally is your truth. But if you can build multiple sources of information and grow your knowledge, then you can form your own path and your own plan for what's right for you. So I think, it's very important, I guess,
Well, first cab off the rank, we've already got a guest in, which is very, very cool. The wonders of technology today. He's actually being zoomed in to this conversation, but it's a really cool concept to be talking to past and currently serving members, and I'm very excited where this series will take us. But can you introduce our first guest, Kane?
Yep, so pleased to introduce Andre Frischot, dialed in via Zoom from Perth. Andre, how you going?
Hey, Kane. Hey, Grace. Happy to be here.
Nice to have you here, Andre. Talk us through, I guess, to begin with, a little bit about your background and story.
Yeah, okay. Born and bred in Perth. I was here until I was 17. I joined the army at 17, moved over to the East Coast and lived up and down the East Coast. Bought my first investment property when I was, about 20, and then it's what am I now, 40. I'm back in WA. I've lived all over Australia. I've been back here for about the last 8 years, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
And how many years did you serve for?
7 years. So I got out when I was 24, and moved back to WA and got into the mining industry.
Cool. And while you're in defence, I believe you went to Afghanistan?
Yeah, I was a heavy diesel mechanic by trade, so in Ramey. I was posted to 5th Aviation Regiment up in Townsville, and did a tour of Afghan with them in 2006.
And fair to say that was a bit of a highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. Highlight of my army career. Life-changing event, but yeah, for the better ultimately. It's
Interesting. So it's funny, out of, my time, I've met many people that, went to Afghanistan or Iraq. No one says a bad word about it, I guess, like from a, career perspective, I guess.
Yeah. Look, it's obviously it's some of it's pretty hard, and it makes us appreciate how good it is here in Australia. But it's I think from a career point of view, it's awesome. It's the pinnacle of being in the defence.
Nice. Cool. And so you mentioned 20 years old, first property. Tell us what triggered it and how you went about it.
Yeah. So I guess growing up in Perth, Mum and Dad were pretty old school. They had the mentality of save for the first property, and then once they bought it, the place that we grew up in, they spent the next 15 years just throwing every spare cent they had at it to pay the debt right down. And it's I remember being a teenager, and it was tight. We didn't have a lot of extra stuff. I listened to Mum and Dad tell stories about, a couple of Christmases. They struggled to be able to buy presents and that sort of stuff. So we didn't come from a wealthy background, but they tried pretty hard to change that. And when I was a teenager, they got into investing, and the property market was moving pretty strong through the 90s, definitely in WA and probably most of Australia. And I know that the Mum and Dad started to have some wins, and they bought a couple of properties and got some capital, and that snowballed a little bit. And probably from about 14 or 15, Dad was dragging me along to investment seminars. I hated it. I was kicking and screaming the whole way. I wasn't interested in going to an investment seminar, but something rubbed off, because by the time I was 17, 18 and, joined the army and had my first real full-time job, I was saving to buy my first place. So that was my goal, is buy a property as soon as I can. And I did that by 20.
And quickly moved into property number 2, is that right?
Yeah, so the first property was in Townsville, and I used the first home owners grant to be able to get the foot in the door with that. I'd saved some extra cash as well, so that put me in a good position to be able to get into property number 2 quite quickly. And it was, funnily enough, it was in the same complex as property number 1. So property number 1 was a unit, property number 2 was a unit next door. I had the mindset of go with what I know. I sort of was thinking I could keep an eye on it. That was the first 2.
Safe as houses, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made
the bathroom, doing the maintenance.
Yeah. I did make the mistake of telling the first tenant I was the owner, and I would never make that mistake again. That was I learnt.
Going back a little bit from that, Andre, and if you're going along to these seminars from 14, 15 and not wanting a bar of it, but your parents clearly had already decided and worked out that was a real vehicle to wealth. How did they get to that point of going, okay, there's something in here?
I think, look, it was really Dad was the driver, and he's pretty cluey. But I think he was sick and tired of doing it tough and doing it the old school way, and he could see there was an opportunity. I think he just got dragged along to a seminar sometime in the late 80s, I think it was, and started to get his head around it. And and they were fortunate. Their first investment property they had some quick wins on as well, so they believed in it, and then it sort of snowballed from there.
Because it was ahead of the curve back then. Investing was not as big of a topic as it is today. So good on the early adopters.
And to go to seminars and come away sort of unscarred, like I remember early 2000s going to a seminar, and you walk out and then there was this broker saying, here, sign these blank mortgage documents, not a word on them, just print it out, sign at the bottom, and I'll take care of the rest. So there was so many, I guess, bad actors around back in that time. I mean, obviously the industry has completely cleaned up a lot since then. But to still be able to build through that and not get, And
for you to take those lessons early.
Yeah, something rubbed off. It was, I didn't enjoy going to him at the time, but something paid off.
And then, so you got 2 properties in the one complex next. You've got a bit of a bug going. You ventured away from that region and purchased number 3. How did you feel about that one?
Yeah, look, fortunate. Within that first year, I made a bit of capital growth in both those first 2 investments and started to look a little bit broader. So I bought the third one down on the Gold Coast. It was a townhouse on the Gold Coast.
Nice. And it was around this time you discharged, is that right?
Yeah, so that was 2000 and back end of 2007, start of 2008. Yep, is when I left the army.
Yep. And then you road trip to Perth, you got a job in the mines, and there was a stop along the way.
Yeah. So the trip back to Perth, we drove down the east coast. Really, I know, probably spent 4 weeks, and then across the bottom to Perth, and we stopped in at Byron Bay on the way. We spent a week there and absolutely fell in love with the place.
I'm guessing this is where the next property was then purchased.
Yeah, that was it. So the mining boom was in full swing in WA in 2008, and I'd been back home for like 2 weeks before I landed a job doing fly in, fly out. And as soon as I had that good income happening again, I was looking back in the Byron Bay area. I thought, this is beautiful over here. It's somewhere I would love to live. And it was 6 months of living in Perth before I found the Byron Bay place, and it bought that in the middle of 2008.
And what was do you mind sharing the price on that one?
Yeah, so it was probably a little bit more than I was planning on spending, but fortunately I'd from my tour of Afghan, I'd saved every last cent that I had, and I put it away for the next property purchase. So I spent just over $1 million, so it was $1.05 million. And it was a 100-acre property just in between Byron Bay and Brunswick Heads, but it's pretty special. So it's on a hill looking out across Byron Bay itself. So looking out at the lighthouse and see the beach. You can walk to the beach from the place. It's pretty cool.
Nice one. I mean, I've been there, I've seen it. It's pretty awesome. But tell us about the first sort of year or so when you, I guess, technically.
Yeah, that was wild. So because the mining boom was going so strong in WA, they couldn't find enough people locally in Western Australia. So a lot of the major companies were promoting what they called national FIFO. So it was like national fly in, fly out. So you could live anywhere in Australia and get flown back and forwards. And so I moved to Byron Bay to this 100-acre block, but there was nothing on the 100-acre block. So I was doing 2 weeks on the mines, flying home to live in a tent for my week off, and at the time building a shed with whatever money I had left over from paying the mortgage. And so it took about 9 months for us to get the shed stood up. So lived in a tent for 9 months.
A lot of people would find that too intimidating to even do. One, back in 2008 during global financial crisis, to take a plunge on $1 million property, but to take a plunge on $1 million property with no property actually on it. How did you go about rationalizing? I don't know if that's quite the right word, but justifying that kind of decision making, because I already know it would have well and truly paid itself off, but a lot of people would have been like, what on earth are you doing at the time?
Yeah, look, I think probably a couple of things. One, and maybe it's a bit of the military background, but being comfortable taking a little bit of risk. And I think so I'm naturally drawn to having a crack and having a go. And I think that's probably the start of it. The second piece is, I've always planned ahead. I've always got the next 10 years mapped out on what I'd love to do. And I was pretty clear what my goals were. I wanted to buy the place in Byron and eventually settle down there. So it was, I felt pretty comfortable actually the whole way through.
And so there's a bit more to unpack on Bruns, but I think there was another property before we circle back to it. So tell us about the next one.
So the next one was on the Gold Coast again, in the Broad Beach area. So this was a high-rise apartment.
And more for when you get sick of the tent on Bruns to have somewhere a bit nicer to go to, was it?
Yeah, it was pretty good location in Broady there, so close to all the pubs and clubs and casino and everything else. And we holiday let that apartment, so conveniently only hour and a bit up the road from Brunswick Heads, Byron Bay. So it was whenever we wanted a weekend away and let our hair down, it was we could use that as well as have the investment side of it, which was good.
Yeah, nice one. So circling back now to Brunswick, the 100 acres. You made a sort of bit of a move on that one, and what you tell us?
When I bought it, how that played out? Or?
Subdivision sort of.
Yeah. So we this would have been probably 2015. So we'd had it for about 7 years. Subdivided a part of it, about 30 acres that we sold off, just one parcel, so didn't subdivide into anything smaller than that. But it was sort of the crappier 30 acres. It was the piece that wasn't as good. And we sold that for about 1.5. So cleared all our debt, had cash in the bank to be able to look at more investments. It was pretty cool.
So you basically sold the bottom half, or the smaller half, cleared all the debt and kept the preem with the lighthouse views up the top with the vision to build the house in the future.
Yeah, we kept the best part of it. So the piece we sold, I might have walked across it twice. It wasn't a piece of land that we were using, or it was just there.
What was the plan? Sorry, always to subdivide that? Had you seen that as a long-term goal for that property?
Not to begin with. To begin with, we were just going to use it. I was thinking about having a bit of a hobby farm. Build a motocross track out the back, have just have it as a fun piece. But when I started talking to some town planners and some mates, and someone planted the seed in my head, and so went and explored it, and yeah, it came together.
Wow, there you go. Cool. And then tell us, so you've still got Bruns. It's obviously pretty special, close to the heart, but what was next?
Yeah, so after Bruns, after the place on the Gold Coast, the Broadbeach, then I moved to up north of Western Australia. So I'll probably go back half a step. We started having kids, and I was doing fly in, fly out with the little ones, and that was really difficult being away for 2 weeks at a time. So we made the decision to let's explore a residential job in WA. So we moved to a place called Wickham, which is just north of Karratha, and I lived there for 5 years in a company provided house, but it gave us an opportunity to use all our properties as investments at that time. But since then, I've now moved back to Perth in 2020, and we bought a house to live in Perth, in the Perth Hills. That was the next property.
Yeah, and you're still there today?
Yeah, still in that place today. We've done quite a few renos and really made it feel like home. So it's going to be tough whenever we do move back to Brunswick Heads, because it really does feel like home at the moment.
Yeah, nice. So that's 6 properties.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
And you've sort of, found your way through to number 6, just doing it yourself. You hadn't used any buyer's agents, or, you just sort of sourced information from a bit of everywhere and executed yourself.
Yeah, it was all really what I learnt myself and having a crack, and hadn't really engaged anyone to assist me on that strategy.
Yep. And then property number 7, you are a client of Discover Buyers Agency, but you've come on board as a client. What made you do that over, you're at 6 properties, you're doing okay yourself. Why did you choose to use a buyer's agent?
I think I just, I didn't want the next couple to, I didn't want to take the same risk that I'd taken earlier on. I think once my family started to grow, and once I've looked at the other commitments in life, I just wanted to make sure that we nailed it and we got it right. If I'm going to put effort into buying more investments, let's make sure they're going to pay off for me.
Yeah. And so how long from signing up, with Discover Buyers Agency to when you purchased was the time frame? Really
quick. And anyone who's been following along with the Perth property market over the last year, 18 months, it's been red hot. So I signed up with Kane, and it was about 2 weeks later we'd already had a contract for a place.
There you go.
You move quick.
Yeah, it was good.
What was the purchase price on that one?
So that was $860, and that was August last year, so August 2023.
And in Perth?
Yeah.
In Perth, yeah.
And I believe you got a bank valuation sort of early last year, or early this year, sorry?
Yeah. It's that would have been about
April, March.
So the market's been moving, and I just wanted to see what we could do. And bank evaluation came in looking pretty good. So came in at $1,050,000. So made 190,000.
8 months.
Yeah. And about that.
Insane.
Yeah, crazy.
Insane.
Crazy.
I mean, but then it also comes off the back of you making $1.5 million in Brunswick Heads.
Yeah.
Like you've obviously got your eye in the right spot. You're working with the right people now to get to this point. I'm curious. I'll probably take it back a step or forward a step. It's probably jumping around a little bit, but when you made the decision to go down the buyer's agent route, and you talk about wanting to make sure you nail it, what is your ultimate end goal from using property?
I think it's probably selfishly to retire early, to make sure the family's set up. I remember the hard times for mum and dad when I was young, and I don't want my family to have hard times. So it's and I don't want that to come off like, yeah, we want to be uber rich or anything. I just want us to be comfortable. So I think the end goal is just to help my family be comfortable.
I don't think that's selfish at all. It's what everyone wants.
Yeah.
Wants to be able to do for the people around them.
I think family and kids put it in perspective as well, like, and really sort of change things for people. And it's not till, I guess, you've had them that, that you experience that. But
yeah, and you have a look how much harder it's going to be for our kids to be able to get into the market. So hopefully we're in a position that I can help them on that journey.
And so tell us, so where's the portfolio, if you're happy to share, like roughly, I know you've sold one or two, but just holistic numbers, sort of where's the portfolio sitting at?
13 plus million.
Yep. And I'm guessing Bruns is a fair heavy lifter of that.
Yeah. The what we've had left of the piece of land that we kept after we subdivided, it's probably in the order of 9 or 10 million. So it was a good investment. It was a good buy. I
want to say that you're not benefiting from the Hemsworth effect, Andre. It's the Andre effect that everyone else benefited from.
Yeah, they all followed me. Maybe.
Cool. So what's some key takeaways, that you've learnt over the years? What would you do again? What wouldn't you do again?
Look, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I think with what I know now, probably a couple of things. One, I would have got professionals helping me with my investment strategy from the word go, rather than trying to learn and have a crack myself. So I think engaging someone like yourself, a buyer's agent from the start, is probably something I would have considered. I think I would have looked further abroad right at the beginning, rather than buying what I knew. So I was living in Townsville. Obviously, the first one I wanted to buy where I was living, so I could access the grant, the first home owners grant. But the second one, buying next door, I don't think was necessarily a smart thing to do. I should have looked more broadly what was happening across Australia. I think taking advantage in the early days of some of the Defence Force options as well. I didn't really look into that. Some of the grants that they had available and some of the allowances to help me on this journey. It was something I realised after the fact. I should have looked at some of that earlier.
So on that first one, you used the first home owners grant, but not any military grant. Is that right?
No, that's right. I used the first home owners grant, but there were military grants available and stuff. But I just didn't look into it. I didn't take advantage of it. Didn't do my research.
That would be HPAS.
Yeah.
Yep. So why didn't you?
I think this is probably the overconfident, right? I thought I knew everything I learnt from a couple of seminars, and I thought I already knew the strategy myself. I thought I knew more than probably the professionals that could help guide me.
So was it that you chose not to use HPAS, or was it that you just didn't know about it and you thought you've got this covered and away you went?
Yeah, pretty much more the latter. I think if I'd known about it, I would have definitely explored it further.
I feel like you're being very hard on yourself too, Andre, in that it was a different world back then when it came to actually investing. The internet was rarely available. It existed, don't get me wrong, but the amount of information that would have been out there, the ease with which you would have been able to access that kind of support, it is a completely different ballgame now.
It is, absolutely. You're right.
I mean, that first purchase was pre-Facebook, if I'm correct.
I think a few of them were,
Yeah.
Even Brunswick Heads pretty much preceded it. Probably were on MySpace, if anything.
It's making me feel old, but yeah, I think it was, yeah.
But really, really cool. How do you find Kane now when you're talking to people like Andre? How much do people know about the grants, the options that are actually out there for them to access?
I think it's sort of like the information's there, but you got to go dig through it and read it, and someone to sort of help you filter through it to see what's applicable to you and what's not. And you spend a lot of your life, like 2 years, 3 years at a time in the Defence Force, because that's how long your posting cycles might be. And you don't know how long you're going to be in an area. So do you really want to commit to buying a house and living in it there? Or, do I buy an investment somewhere else, and how do I do that, and what can I do? So there's a lot of, although the information's there, it's about how do I apply that to my unique circumstances and maximise, these opportunities.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the unique circumstances, because obviously Andre is coming to you in a very different position to what some of the other people that you would be working with is. How then is that going to take Andre's journey forward from here? What are the kind of discussions that you're both having?
Well, I guess he's probably a bit more mature now. Like he said, there's family sitting on, there's equity there. So he's got, equity, serviceability at his disposal, and it's now just picking assets to park in the portfolio and just sort of build out that strategy for the next however many years till retirement looms, I guess.
And that's not very far off if you're going to retire early. Not because you're old, Andre. Not at all because you're old, but it's obviously something that you're already thinking about.
Yeah, look, I'm 40. If I could be doing what I wanted to do by 50, whether it be my own business or something that is not working for somebody else, that's probably the goal. So had a number of conversations with Kane on what that could look like and what the strategies could look like and what do we need to do between now and then to really set us up.
And this isn't a huge strategy session, so I'm not going to get you to unpack it in great detail. There's obviously a lot that goes into the back end for working out someone's strategy, but what is some of the, ballpark figures or number of properties looking like that you're discussing at the moment?
Look, if I could probably get, I'd say another 3 or 4 properties. I think that'll be it. Like it's and then looking at what other investments should we carry as well, just to make sure we've got the right level of diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you say other investments from property on a property podcast? That's swear.
Yes. How dare you? No, but it all comes into that balanced portfolio, right? And you probably are dealing with that with a lot of people, that they come in with quite diverse wants, needs, circumstances. I
guess it all comes down to reverse engineering from the goal, isn't it? Like it's very easy to say, 5, 10, 20 properties but what's the actual goal that we're trying to achieve, and what's the plan to reverse engineer to get there? So, and it's kind of breaking it down. You can't get to number 5 or 10 without, that first one and then the second one. So it's sort of like a step at a time, but knowing the greater plan, I guess.
So when are you moving back to Byron Bay, Andre?
That's an active conversation. It could be as soon as the next couple of years. It could be another 5 years away. It's talking about it with the family and seeing where it all fits in. So my oldest has just started high school and settled down with her friends. So trying to move them now might be a little bit tricky. So just working out when's the right time for everyone.
And any final thoughts or tips for the young servicemen and women out there listening?
Probably, I would encourage you all to take action early. If I look at the thing that has worked for me more so than others is not waiting and having a crack. Like it's the times I've taken a risk and the times I've put myself outside of my comfort zone have ultimately they've paid off.
That brings me to my last question for you, Kane, which is around great advice there, Andre, and taking risks. How does that measure with the approach that you normally ask clients to take? Do they just consider investing in property a risk in itself?
Yeah, I like the take an action approach. Like, I remember when we worked with Andre and we presented that property to him, before he even looked at the link, he goes, "Is it a good one? Would you buy it?" I'm like, I'm presenting it to you, so of course.
Passes the pub test.
Yeah, essentially. And he said yes. You know what I mean? So it was just trust in the process. And he said yes. And look at the result that he got. He was in a good market early, and you know, almost 12 months on now, it's done very well. So and I guess taking action. I mean, that's almost Andre's motto here, isn't it? Like, not many people would be willing to live in a tent under a tree for close to a year. But what a way that it turned out.
Yeah,
so,
and what a story.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Andre, thank you so much for sharing those insights. I feel like you've started us off very strong, Kane, with choice of guest.
Set the bar high, Andre.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Almost nervous to see who you'll pull out of the bag next, because, I mean, this has been a great episode, super, super insightful. Great to hear someone's lived story as well on how they've gotten to where they are, and to see that the investing journey is clearly not over. So thank you, Andre.
Thanks, Grace.
And for any Air Force, Army, Navy people out there listening, and you do have a story to share, I think it'd be a great reach out, Kane at discoverbuyersagency.com.au. Love to hear from you and have you on the show if you'd like to share your story.
So, Kane, if they do maybe not have an investment property portfolio yet, but they go, actually, this is probably something that I should be doing, is that the same contact email to
100%, yeah. Kane at discoverbuyersagency.com.au, or the website, just www.discoverbuyersagency.com.au. Reach out to us. Love to hear from you and share some experiences and help where we can.
There you go. I'm already looking forward to the next episode, which will be next month. So we'll get preparing for that one, and we'll see you all very soon. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs, and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.